The interview process to select the next National Director of Public Prosecutions has come under fire. The Democratic Alliance has threatened legal action to interdict aspects of the interviews and object to the inclusion of Advocate Menzi Simelane. At the same time, civil society is calling for more transparency and public participation in how the NDPP is selected. Legal expert Melusi Xulu joins us now to chat further about this. Melusi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, perhaps...
Good afternoon, Mpumela.
Yeah, Melusi, perhaps it would be useful to start with just giving an indication of what it is that Simelane has been accused of. In 2012, the Constitutional Court confirmed his appointment was irrational because of findings regarding his integrity in the Ginwala inquiry. From a legal perspective, Menzi, can a candidate whose previous appointment that was declared unconstitutional or unlawful ever be rehabilitated, so to speak, and their status be deemed good enough for consideration in the same role?
Well, the concern that the DA is raising in this is the fact that the decision that was made by the Supreme Court of Appeal and the Constitution 13 years ago has not been softened or has not been challenged, so it stands as it is, meaning what the Constitutional Court stated has not been challenged. And if it does then become the NDPP, I believe that obviously whoever is challenging Advocate Simelane will go back to courts to say we are challenging his appointment because it was decided before that his appointment was not proper and is not a fit and proper person to be in NDPP. Then I believe they'll then bring it back again so that what was stated then is repeated. I think that's how I'm looking at it.
So the onus you're saying would be on the panel and not necessarily on Simelane to prove that he is fit for the position.
Yes, that is their job to do so. But I'm more particularly focused on the fact that I believe it's the DA who will, if it does happen that he's chosen as the NDPP for some reason by the panel or by the recommendation to the president, I believe they're the ones that will ensure that they challenge his appointment based on the fact that 13 years ago he was deemed to not be a fit and proper person to be in NDPP.
Now, there have been suggestions that controversial candidates like Simelane were included as a sort of stalking horse to absorb public outrage and reduce scrutiny for other candidates. Could the process have been designed to shield preferred candidates, perhaps who are less qualified from rigorous public debate?
I would not know how or the motives for how he was chosen, but the fact is obviously he believes that he qualifies to be an NDPP and he applied. And besides him, obviously, if there's any scrutiny, he shouldn't be the only one who has to have a public scrutiny on his appointment. Everyone who's there must be looked at in every way, whether they qualify or not. So whether there's some motive why he was chosen or not, but he believes that he should be the NDPP, he got a chance for that. And if there's anyone who's objecting, obviously they have a right to do so. But not only him, any other candidate who applied to be the NDPP, if they are found wanting, they should be challenged as well, not only Advocate Simelane.
Now, Melusi, you were saying that earlier on that it seems that you agree with the panel to say, or rather with Barnabas Xulu, who had said that Cronje did get some kind of special treatment where, you know, her objections were not raised to her in her interview process.
Yes, Mpumela, I want us to look at it this way. With Advocate Simelane, as we've discussed previously, before the interruption, there were objections, and he addressed those in his way. And with Advocate Johnson as well, where she was involved in the interview panel in some way for a husband at the job that he was applying, she did address it because the objections were made to her. But with Advocate Cronje, like I was saying, on the 4th of December, the letter was written. On the 5th of December, it was acknowledged that there are objections of a 99-page. I think you addressed that with Mr. Xulu on an interview you had with him. Now, the problem is on the 11th of December, she still did not get the objections given to her to address properly without addressing it in the will, without reading the objections. So there seems to be some form of favor. That is the perception that is being seen, or that might be seen, that there seems to be some form of favor and biasness towards it. And when this was made, the complaint was made again, the panel did not address that. They just acknowledged the receiving the objection. So now the problem is, how do they explain not giving the objections to her? That is what they must explain. So now it might look as if the panel might be irregular, but maybe once they give us a response to Mr. Xulu's complaint, we might understand why they did not give her the objections before the interview happened.
Melusi, a question I raised to Barnabas Xulu is, how do we know, because we're not privy to the deliberations that they have as a panel, how do we know that they did not indeed consider these objections and would therefore inform their recommendation to the president?
Yes, that is why I'm saying they have to be the ones, the panel, or whoever is communicating with that, they have to be the one to explain whether what Mr. Xulu is complaining about is true or not, because he says he gave the information to them on the 4th, and on the 5th they acknowledged that they actually had this email that was sent, or the complaint, which is in 99 pages, I said. But there seems to be no, even in the interview, there seems to be no a way of addressing this by the panel to say to her, there's a complaint that was lodged publicly in this way, and how do you address it? That is what Mr. Xulu is trying to address, that it looks like for public scrutiny, this was not properly addressed. And I believe they should be the ones to be able to explain, if they did not do it, why they did not do it the way that they should have done, like they did with Ms. Advocate Simelane, they did with Advocate Johnson. So there must be fairness and consistency across broad. That is what Mr. Xulu is calling for.
The president isn't strictly bound by the panel's choice. So if he does choose to go with a candidate recommended by the panel, or chooses the most controversial one on the list, what are the constitutional implications for the NPA's perceived independence?
Like anybody else who's a citizen of the country, you have a right to object to the decision that the president has made. In particular, the most important question that we need to ask ourselves as the citizens, we need to ask ourselves, is the person who's going to be the NDPP the right person who's going to drive the vision of the NPA, which is justice in our country for every citizen, so they ensure that everyone is safe and there's protection for those people. So we need a person who's also independent and also has shown that they have integrity. So if the president chooses someone who does not have those qualities, that person will not be fit and proper. And we've seen there's precedent for that. We've seen 13 years ago when Advocate Simelane was chosen in 2010 to be the NDPP, the DA went to challenge it. 13 years ago, it was deemed that his appointment was not done properly and is not fit and proper. So if it happens, the president chooses someone who's, inverted commas, controversial, or who does not fit to the vision of the NPA, the same process can be done again. It can be challenged at the Constitutional Court, or any court that is applicable, so that it can be set aside and a person who's fit and proper will be chosen.
Melusi, there are some quarters that may argue on that very point, that saying that 10 years experience is already an indication that whoever comes in will not be fit and proper or be able to lead the country's policing, right? What do you make of that, of just the regulations for individuals who want this position?
Can you repeat again? I didn't hear you.
So I want us to reflect on the regulations coming into for individuals who want this position. Some might argue that they are a bit low. 10 years of experience isn't adequate.
Well, yes, maybe that will be a perception by the public. But I think what we need as South Africans more than anything, is a person who can drive the vision of the NPA as it should be done, and also constitutional, because we need a person who's independent and who also can have a way of integrity in how they do their matters, and who do their job without fear or favor. 10 years experience maybe for some is low, but what will be the assistance of the country if someone has 20 years experience but does not have the qualities that need? So I think let's look at the qualities first, and the experience is important, but they must also be balanced with the qualities that we need based on the vision of the NPA and based on the vision of the Constitution as per Section 179.
How the panel is constituted has also been a point that people have raised. I mean, Advocate Sipho Mantula has suggested that omitting Parliament from the panel weakens the process. What do you make of that?
I believe that at the end of the day, we need a panel that will choose the right person. However, if we believe that the people on the panel might not be the people that will need to choose the right person, I believe that should be challenged as well. But at the end of the day, we all have a right to object to whoever will be chosen. That is why I'm saying at the end of the day, objections have been made. There has been complaints that has been made. Let's see what the recommendation will be by the panel, and let's see what the president will choose. Then I believe after a person that has been chosen and some members of the society believe that he's not the right person or she's not the right person, we have a right to object to that and take it to the High Court or a Supreme Court of Appeal, as has happened in the past. So maybe there are complaints about the panel, but let's give them a chance and see what they will do or what they will recommend. Already, though, there are complaints that we've been discussing now by Mr. Xulu and the DA.
Melusi, thank you very much for your time and insights this afternoon. That was legal expert Melusi Xulu.